Okay. Thank you very, very much for joining us, everybody, to School of Mitzvot, for coming. Thank you for taking the time to prepare for Shavuot by studying Pirkei Avot, which is what we're going to be doing today, B'ezrat Hashem. Potchim B'chvod Achsania. So we would like to thank Mrs. Kohan for hosting us to School of Mitzvot. Thank you for this beautiful spread. And for very graciously hosting us to School of Mitzvot, and Dr. Kohan as well. We thank him too. So we'd like to dedicate the learning today for the Refuah Shlema of Kol Cholei Israel, especially Shachar ben Chana, Yaakov Yisrael, Avraham ben Chana, Esther Helen, Shmuel Moshe ben Chanina, Mordechai ben Evelyn. If anybody else has any names for Refuah Shlema, you can say it now. So we're learning for their Refuah Shlema. And all of Cholei Israel, they should all have a speedy recovery. Okay. So today I want to focus, Be'ezrat Hashem, on 3 Mishnayot that we have in Pirkei Avot. And it's in the 3rd chapter, as this is the 3rd week that we're doing this. So I want to start off with a little bit of an introduction to the person that we are going to be speaking about. Also, being that it's close to Lag Baomer, I also want to talk a little bit about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, as tomorrow night is Lag Baomer too. So let's begin. So first of all, we're talking about Perek Gimel Mishnah Yud Aleph. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa Omer. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa says, Kol she'irat chet'o kodemet lechochmato, chochmato mitkayemet. Whomever his fear of sin precedes his knowledge, then his knowledge will last. It'll be a withstanding knowledge. Kol shechochmato kodemet li'irat chet'o, en chochmato mitkayemet. However, if let's say his knowledge precedes his fear of sin, his sin will not last. Let's explain a couple of things. First of all, who was Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa? And second of all, what does this mean? We're going to take it apart step by step. So first of all, we need to know about the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. If it's not a name that's on the tip of your tongue that you know who this is, then you have to know who this is. It paid to come just to hear about the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Okay? This is really amazing. The Gemara in Masechet Ta'anit, Daf Chaf Daled Amud Aleph, tells us that every day there was a bat kol. When the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was alive, there was a heavenly voice that came out from Shamayim and said that Kol ha'olam kulo nizon b'shvil Chanina b'ni. The whole world gets its sustenance because of the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Hashem said, Chanina b'ni, Chanina my son. That's how he said it. The whole world gets what they get. In other words, the guy makes a deal and he makes money. The reason he made that deal was because of Rabbi Chanina b'ni. There was a guy that, Baruch Hashem, he got a new job, or he has his fruit grew from his trees. Why? Because Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. It's a Gemara. It says that the whole world had its sustenance because of Chanina b'ni, Chanina my son. What is the significance of this? Why is this so important? So first of all, we have to understand one thing. A lot of times we think that we have done things, we have accomplished things, and many times it could be true, but also many times it could be that it's because there's a certain tzaddik out there in the world that is so righteous that in his zechut we have what we have. It's a concept that we are not so familiar with, but that's what this Gemara is teaching us. That there's a concept that a person has what here in this case, it's not just one guy, it's the whole world has what they have because of this tzaddik, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. It's a concept that we're not so used to, but it's true. So it could be a person makes a deal, it could be a person signs a new contract or whatever it may be, and little does he know, it's not because he went to whatever school or because he did whatever it is that he thought he was doing. It's because there's some tzaddik in Bnei Brak or I don't know in Lakewood somewhere that's sitting and learning a whole day, and he's a tremendous tzaddik. That's why he got what he got. It's a foreign thought. We're not used to that, but that's indeed what we're learning now. But let's talk a little bit more about Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, just to give you some points. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was a very, very poor man. He was so poor that on Friday, the rest of that statement, by the way, it says, V'chanina b'ni dayo b'kav charuvim me'erev Shabbat le'erev Shabbat, which means that Rabbi Chanina and his own family, even though he was the source of parnasah for the whole world, for himself, he only had one basket of carobs. You guys know what carobs are, right? How do you say carobs in Farsi? Huh? It's like peas in a pod, but it's brown. It's a brown, not sabzi. No, not green. It's, how do you say brown? Yeah. Okay. At any rate, carobs. What? Carobs. It's like if you ever see peas in a pod, but they're green. This is brown. Yeah, exactly. How do you say charub, right? Okay, so it's the same word in Hebrew, charuvim. Same thing. That's the idea. Charuvim. Exactly. Right. It's basic minimum sustenance just to survive. But they had nothing else besides that the entire week. There you go. There you go, right there. Carrots, right there. Look at that. Let's show it for the people on Savoy. There you go. Here's a carrot. Fantastic. Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you. I always have it, I think. Huh? You always have it. Yes. So you're like Shimon Bar Yochai. You have the carrot. So that's the thing. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and his family, his whole family, they lived off one basket of those the whole week, from Friday to Friday. That's all they had. Now it came time for Shabbat, and the wife didn't have what to cook. She didn't have what to bake, nothing. So you know what she did? The Gemara tells us that she would go to her oven, and she would turn on the oven so that it should start to smoke and heat up, so that her neighbors would think that she's baking something. But meanwhile, there's nothing there. So there's one lady that was like a mean-spirited person. And she knew that they were so poor they didn't have anything. So she decided to knock on the door. Boom, 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 boom. What are you making in there? What are you baking? She actually came inside the house and she was expecting to see nothing in the oven. She opens up the oven and they had a miracle. It was full of challahs and it was full of, and the dough, there was a dough inside of her bowl it's as if she was in the middle of making the dough. So Hashem didn't want them to be embarrassed. But that was their situation. Every single week they had nothing. They were totally, totally poor. His wife told him, how long is this going to last? What do you do? We have to do something, So he said, what should I do? So she said, you should pray. Pray that we should have rachamim. Hashem should send us something. So he prayed, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent him some beautiful, beautiful bar of gold out of heaven. It had all kinds of beautiful fancy diamonds on it, all kinds of beautiful, it's something that you're set for life with this thing, with tons and tons of money. And that night, he and his wife both had a dream that in Olam Haba, the tables of all the tzaddikim have 3 legs. And they saw that their table in Olam Haba only has 2. They realized that what they had received was the 3rd leg. So they were very upset. They said, wait a second, now for all of eternity, this is just 120 years over here, but for all of eternity, our table in Olam Haba is only with 2 legs? So she said to him, you got to do something. So he said, what should I do? She said, pray. So he prayed, and the Shamayim took back the leg. And the Gemara says that is a greater miracle than what happened in the first place, because when Hashem sends you something, he always sends it, but he doesn't take it back. So that was a tremendous thing. He was a tremendous Baal Moftim. It says that his daughter... What does Moftim mean? Miracles. He was a master of miracles. Yeah, he's a tremendous miracle worker. It says that his daughter one time didn't have oil for lighting Shabbat candles, and she exchanged it with vinegar. She put vinegar in the Shabbat candles, and she was so disturbed because it's not going to light now. She doesn't have a way to light Shabbat candles. So Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa told her, Mi she'amar l'shemen ve'idlak, yomar la chometz ve'idlak. Right? Whoever said to the oil that it should burn and give you light, also will say to the chometz, to the vinegar, that it should give you light as well. And so it happened. The vinegar was able, they put a wick inside and it lit on fire. He was a big miracle worker. Many times different rabbis asked him to pray for their children. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the head of the Sanhedrin, Rabban Shimon Gamliel, they both had children that were sick. They asked Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa to pray for them. And he did, and they got better. And he told them, people that came to ask Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa to pray for the child of Rabban Shimon Gamliel, as he finished praying, he said, "Don't worry, go back, he's fine." And they took note of the time. And it was, as they got back to the rabbi, he told them that, Baruch Hashem, my son is much better. His fever is gone, he's fine. And they asked him, what time was it? And it's exactly the time that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa finished praying. So they asked him, how did you know that your prayer was accepted? So he said, whenever I pray, so I can sense based on how the prayer is coming out of my mouth, if it was accepted or not accepted. It says, if when I say the words, it's coming out, it's flowing nicely, I know that Hashem accepted my prayer. If it's like coming out and it's difficult for me to say it, then I know that it's not happening. The guy is going to die. Never. Yeah. So he was able to, based on how the words were coming out of his mouth, he was able to say whether or not the person would be doing okay or not. Just to get a glimpse of who we are speaking about. So, Avotai, step one of today's shiur is who was Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was one of the greatest tzaddikim to ever live. I hope you guys absorb that name, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, one of the greatest tzaddikim who ever lived. So, let's talk about what he has to say. So we're coming now to the words of the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, and he says the following: Kol sheyirat chet'o kodemet lechokhmato, chokhmato mitkayemet. As you know, the study of Torah, the study of halachot, and to know what to do, how to conduct yourself, and all of that, it's very important, extremely important. But says Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, there's a prerequisite to that. And that's very important for Shavuot, because on Shavuot we're about to receive the Torah. There's a prerequisite to the study of the Torah and the knowledge of the Torah. And that is that you must first have your Yirat Shamayim. You have to have fear of heaven. All the studying that you could do, no matter how much it's going to be, if it's not paired together with fear of God, then none of it is meaningful. None of it will mean anything. It's all going to fall on deaf ears.
Can you describe the fear of God? Like, what are you looking for?
What it means is like this: a person has to approach the study of Torah for what it is, which is the word Torah comes from the word hora'ah, which means instruction, guidance. The Torah is a lifetime manual. It's a manual for life, basically. When you buy a car, there's a booklet inside the car that tells you how to use the car. You buy a computer, there's some kind of little pamphlet that tells you how to use the computer. Person is born, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a manual for life that's called the Torah. The understanding has to be that when you sit down and learn and you are trying to absorb the words of Hashem, it's with the understanding that you're trying to actually follow what the Torah says and do what the Torah says. That's the idea, that you have to do it in a way that it's not just for an intellectual pursuit, but rather it's for the purpose of changing who you are for the better in the eyes of God. That's the idea. There have been many such examples throughout the ages of people that have reached great levels of wisdom, but being that there was no fear of heaven, their behavior was completely off. Completely off. I'll give you one example. There's a story with the great Aristotle. You know about Aristotle? He was a great Greek philosopher and scientist, and the Rambam writes about him that he was probably one of the smartest goyim to ever live. He was such a tremendous, tremendous genius. And he was actually the teacher of Alexander the Great, the Greek emperor who conquered many parts of the world. and he taught him, and he mentored him, and he guided him, and he did so much for him. So many different books bring down a very interesting description of the downfall of Aristotle. What happened to him? How did he die, basically? What brought about his death? So it says that Aristotle, being as great of a person that he was, and being that he was a genius, he had access to basically all of the royalty, to all the nobility. He was the head honcho. I mean, Alexander was the emperor, but he was Alexander's teacher, So he knew everybody. And he took a very great desire for Alexander the Great's wife. Very interesting. Of all people to land on, the queen. It's like you're playing with fire. No, it doesn't matter. He was very, very infatuated with her. And time after time, he pursued her and tried again and again and again. And she always rejected it. Until one point she said, this is crazy. There has to be an end to this, because also it's embarrassing, and it's her husband's teacher, and it's a whole thing. But she said, this has to come to an end. So she explained the whole situation to her husband. He was shocked, and he said, okay, let's come up with a plan. So she decided that eventually she's going to say yes. She's going to say yes to his request. And she's going to tell him that he should come to the house on this and that day when her husband's not around, and that's when they'll finally do what they need to do. Okay? So she says that to Aristotle, and Alexander the Great is in on the whole thing, and he's hiding under the bed. He's hiding there. And Aristotle comes in, and he starts to, really get into it. And that's when Alexander the Great pops out from out of nowhere, and he basically catches him in the act, about to do what he has to do. Now, Aristotle,
his wife was there?
She was the one who lured him into this agenda.
But
Was
she like, were they?
No, they didn't actually do anything.
Didn't do anything.
It was about to, but it was a trap. Exactly. So there they are, and Alexander the Great actually catches him in this. It's his own teacher. Now the problem that he had was that he can't kill Aristotle. He says, you're supposed to get a death penalty now, but first of all, you're my teacher. I have respect for you. You taught me everything, but you cannot hang around us anymore. Basically, about 3 weeks later, he was so sick from the whole thing that had taken place, out of his embarrassment and his suffering. And Alexander the Great also punished him in different ways. He didn't kill him, but he punished him. And because of that, he died very shortly thereafter. But again, it's an example of an idea. What?
Did they kill him?
They didn't kill him. They caused him great suffering. And eventually eventually he died. But the point that I'm trying to bring out is that wisdom, without an understanding of where the wisdom comes from and what's the purpose of the wisdom, that's not going to get you anywhere. The guy is basically a walking animal. As wise as he may have been, he's a lowlife, right? So that's because it's not understanding that there's a source to all the wisdom. There's a reason for that wisdom that you have. And it's coming from Hashem, who expects you to behave in certain ways, to do certain things for your own benefit. By the way, by Goyim also, they're not supposed to do that. By Goyim, it's one of the 7 mitzvot that the sons of Noach are commanded to observe.
I'm sorry, so fear of God means that if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get punished? Or is this the awe of Hashem? Like, I'm confused.
Fear of God means, in the simplest term over here, it means that when you're learning, you're trying to absorb it in order to change and to actually bring it to reality, to do it. Not just as an intellectual pursuit, but that you intend to practice what you learn. That's the idea. Because that's the purpose ultimately of all of it, that you should change who you are, you should become better, you should become stronger, become closer to Hashem. That's ultimately.
Purpose. That's my purpose.
Yes, exactly.
To be afraid of Hashem.
Of course.
But in awe.
I feel like that you can.
It's both.
It's a simple
fear,
right.
which You have to understand something. There are moments of fear that a person could experience when you're in a courthouse, for example, and a cell phone rings and the judge gets mad and could hold you in contempt of court and he give you a sentencing for who knows. All of a sudden the person's scared, So if that's from a person, from Hashem, how much more? There's a certain fear that we're supposed to have. We don't feel it, we don't see it, so we don't have that fear. That's not so tangible to us. But at the same time, that fear should be there. But then there's also even more, which is awe, which is also true. They're both correct. See what I'm saying? Okay, I'll give you another example. In Volozhin Yeshiva, there was a time when, unfortunately, Volozhin is one of the greatest yeshivas that ever existed in Europe. There was a time where the reform movement was really picking away at the best and the best of the boys of the yeshiva world back in Europe. And it reached a point where they had certain instances where boys were sitting on Shabbat in yeshiva, learning with a cigarette in the dormitory, sitting down with a cigarette, smoking. So wait a second, you're learning Torah. You're going through a sugya. And you're going through the whole thing with a cigarette on Shabbat. What happened? The answer is, it's again, same idea. You're looking at it as an intellectual pursuit, which is, I want to learn the concepts, I want to learn the ideas, but it's not going to affect what I'm actually supposed to do, which is keep Shabbat, right? It's not going to change me. So again, that's what we're talking about over here. You have to have your ad chet'o kodemet lechochmato. The idea that going into the learning, you're saying, I'm doing this because Hashem is trying to guide me in the right direction to teach me what's right for my own benefit. I'm doing this for myself. You see, you have to understand one thing. There was a woman, her name is Marie Curie. You ever hear about Marie Curie? She was the woman who discovered nuclear science, basically. She was the one who started splitting atoms apart, protons, neutrons. And what happened to her is that she eventually died from radiation. As you know, when you go to the dentist, what do? They put that big thing on you, that big plastic whatever, so that their x-rays, it's a shield that the x-rays shouldn't shoot through your body, right? So she didn't know about it. So because she started playing with this stuff, splitting protons, neutrons, all these things, she ended up getting radiation and she died from it. She didn't know. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to save us from that. Hashem is telling us, listen, I'm giving you the Torah to teach you. This is good for you. This is bad for you. This is going to help you. He didn't have to do that for us, right? He didn't have to tell us that shrimp is bad for us. He could have said, okay, you figure out yourself. See what happens, right? But over here, the idea is that when you go into learning, you have to understand it's Hashem talking to us, trying to teach us that we should learn, that we should grow and become better. There's a yeshiva in Israel, Chas v'shalom to call it a yeshiva. It's a yeshiva chilonit. You ever hear about this? It's a yeshiva, quote unquote yeshiva, where they teach Talmud in Israel, but nobody wants to observe anything. They teach the Talmud, yeshiva chilonit. Again, it doesn't make sense. That's the exact antithesis of this Mishnah.
What is
A non-observant yeshiva, where nobody. In other words, for secular Jews who are trying to stay secular, no point. You understand? No point.
Intellectual thing.
Exactly. Just to learn the Talmud, to understand the Talmud, it doesn't work like that.
They don't want to change.
The Koreans do that too.
Okay, that's a different thing. They're not required to keep Torah and mitzvot. That's a different story. But the point is that it doesn't make any sense. I'll give you another example. This one might be a little bit more sensitive, but it's the same thing. Kabbalah Center. Okay? Bad news. Bad news. I'm sorry if I have to say it, but it's bad news. When you have a place that, again, they're trying to teach you, quote unquote, Kabbalah, and it's, for a certain fee that they're always trying to get out of you, and they're trying to teach it to whoever is going to be the highest bidder, whether it's this celebrity or that celebrity or him or her, it doesn't make a difference. And meanwhile, the person doesn't know how to read Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, right? Or actually go through, you ask him a question in Gemara, he has no clue, so then that's bad news. This is what we're looking for. The guy has to know Torah first. He has to know that he is obligated to keep the Torah, that he has to follow the mitzvah. And then when he reaches a certain level, then he's able to proceed to that. I got a donation Not too long ago, somebody donated a set to the shul of Zohar. It looked like a beautiful set of Zohar. I said, okay, awesome. So I look at the Zohar and I put it up on the shelves. Fantastic. I'm very excited about it. And then somebody tells me that he opens it up and inside it says Kabbalah Center. I was like, oh no. I literally took all the Zohar and I put it in Geniza. Not in my shul. I don't want that. Because what that means is that people are going to look inside and they're going to see, oh, this is the Kabbalah, I don't know, whatever the website is. Hashem Yishmor, it's bad news. Because of this Mishnah, Rabotai, you have to first have your Yirat Shamayim. The first prerequisite to any learning is that the person has to have fear of Hashem. And when somebody is doing these things because they want to make money or because they want to do whatever it may be, that's not fear of Hashem. You understand? It's a big problem. It's important that we should all be aware of this, so that if you have somebody that is suggested, welcome, to go to one of these types of places, that you should tell them not to go at all costs. Do not go for Shabbat. Do not go to any of these types of places. You understand? I hope I'm being clear. I don't know if I'm being clear.
There's also
Yeah.
something that is very good about what you're saying is that I was taught, like my husband is telling me, is like whenever you are in doubt, if you follow the Torah, you can never go wrong. Like, you have to make a decision.
Right.
But if you go according to what the Torah tells you, that's you don't know what you're doing. Or you just say, okay, the Torah tells me this. I don't know if it, to me, like might not sound like the right thing to do, but this is what the Torah says. Like you can never go wrong. And I love that. I love that philosophy.
True.
Just like
100%. You'll never lose by doing what Hashem wants you to do.
Right.
Never. That comes up a lot of times. People they are debating whether or not to send their kids to yeshiva. My son won't have a living afterwards. He won't have a parnassa. He won't have this. Won't have that. And I said to them, you really think that by teaching your son Torah, by doing what Hashem wants you to do, you are going to lose out? He's going to lose out? He won't have a parnassa. Really? The whole world goes to yeshiva and they have plenty of parnassa and more. And your son won't? It doesn't make sense. But people sometimes have a hard time seeing that. Okay, so that's Mishnah Aleph, number 1. So again, it has to be that Yirat Chet'o Kodemet Lechochmato. The prerequisite, like we say it every Shabbat, Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem. The first thing that a person has to learn is there needs to be Yirat Hashem. He has to have fear of Hashem. Once he has fear of Hashem, then he can learn, he can grow, and he can put to use everything that he's learning. But if he's not interested and he doesn't want to do what Hashem wants, then there's no point. So it's important to make sure that he has Yirat Hashem. Now I want to point out something else. A lot of times you might learn something and you might find it hard. It doesn't mean that you should stop learning. You should always continue learning, keep trying, keep growing. Eventually it will penetrate. Eventually it'll get into you and it will change you. There's the Midrash tells us, Halevai oti azvu v'torati shamaru, shemitoch shelomdim Torah ha'ma'or sheba yachziram lemutav. Hashem says, even if they leave me and they leave everything, but they still at least learn Torah, it'll still have some kind of positive effect on them to change them. So never stop learning. But the idea is in general, when we want to work on ourselves, the first thing that we have to work on ourselves is to have Yirat Shamayim, to work on our fear of Hashem, that we will do what we learn and not just learn for an intellectual pursuit. That's why it says, Kol shechochmato kodemet lirato. Person has Yirat Shamayim first, and then a person doesn't have Yirat Shamayim first, and he learns, and chochmato mitkayemet, so it won't last for him because it's not going to be something he's interested in keeping. He doesn't have Yirat Shamayim. Okay, let's go to Mishnah Yud Bet. Hu haya omer. So again, the same Rabbi Chanina and Dosa used to say, Kol shema'asav merubim mechochmato, chochmato mitkayemet. If his deeds are greater than his knowledge, then his knowledge will last. Again, what's the idea over here? The idea over here is the following. A person has to make an effort that he accepts upon himself that whatever he learns, he's going to do. Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you very much. You can just perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so the idea is that there's a very basic question that the Mefarshim ask. It says Yaakov Avinu leaves the house of Lavan. And who's he about to meet up with? Esav. Esav is coming to him with 400 men, and he ostensibly is trying to kill Yaakov, right? That's what it seems like is going to happen. Now, Yaakov sends a message to Esav. He sends a group of people, or malachim, to Esav, and he tells Esav, Im Lavan garti. I was living with Lavan. Now, what does that mean? Why does he have to tell him that? So it says that Rashi brings down that the word garti is the same letters as taryag, which means 613. So what's he telling Esav? He's telling him that I was living with Lavan. You know who this man is. He's a swindler, he's a charlatan, he's a terrible person, and he tried to cheat me 1,000,000 times. As you know, this guy, you know our uncle, you know who he is. And Tariyagu mitzvot shamarti, but I still kept all 613 mitzvot. I didn't mess him over, I didn't cheat him, I didn't try and trick him, I didn't try and do anything to him. Whatever he did to me, whatever, I left it. But I was straight, I was correct, I didn't do anything wrong. So don't worry, I'm not a changed person. I'm not going to harm you. I didn't learn from his ways. I'm not trying to attack you. He's trying to appease his brother Esau. So one of the Mefarshim, I think it's the Be'er Yosef, he says, how could Yaakov say, Taryag mitzvot shamarti, I kept all 613 mitzvot? It's impossible for one Jew to keep all 613 mitzvot. For example, some mitzvot are just for a Kohen. A Kohen can work in Bet HaMikdash, a regular guy is not a Kohen, cannot. Some mitzvot are just for women, right? Go to the mikveh after the, becoming, when the period's over. That's for women. It's not for men. I can't do that. Some people want to stay married. They don't want to give their wife a get, a divorce, right? A get is one of the 613 mitzvot. I once gave a class. I said, if he wants to get divorced, that's how he has to do it, right? I once gave a class to a group of guys. I said, it's one of the 613 mitzvot to give a wife a get. Does anyone want to do that? So one guy goes, at least he's honest. Anyway, so the idea is that it's something that you can't possibly do all 613. It's not possible. So what is the understanding of Yaakov saying that I want to do all 613? So the answer is, says the Be'er Yosef, to be a shomer mitzvah doesn't mean that you necessarily did the mitzvah. But what it does mean is that you are ready, willing, and able to do any mitzvah that Hashem gives you at any given moment. So Yaakov didn't say Taryag mitzvot kiyamti. He said Taryag mitzvot shamarti, which means I guarded over the mitzvot. I was ready, willing, and able to do anything, and whatever Hashem told me, I would do it at that moment. So when you have that attitude, you're called a shomer mitzvot, somebody who guards over the mitzvot. No matter which mitzvah will come to you, you're ready, willing, and able to do it. Over here says the Magen Avot, Chacham Ovadia brings down, he says that's the meaning of this Mishnah, that kol shema'asav merubim mechochmato, which means that when he learns something, he accepts to do it, right? That's how he gets all the Taryag mitzvot. Just like what it says by the Jewish people, when on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they were commanded to take a lamb for each family, and they're going to slaughter it on the night of on the 14th of the month of Nisan for the Passover lamb, and they're going to eat it on the night of the 15th. So it says the following. It says, "Vayilchu vayasu b'nei Yisrael." They went and they did it. Now, when did they go and do it? They did it 14 days later. But since they accepted to do it on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's as though they already did it on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So it's talking over here in this Mishnah about the readiness and the willingness to be willing to do the mitzvah that is going to come to you. So for that reason, there's a special idea, says this Mishnah, that a person who learns something and is accepting upon himself that in the event that this mitzvah comes to me, I'm ready, willing, and able to do it. So that chokhmah, that knowledge that he has just learned, that Torah that he has just studied or she has studied, it will last. It will stay in their mind. It won't go away. Why? Because they've accepted to do what they're learning. That's the idea. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa is giving us this message again and again, that we are trying to accept upon ourselves to do what it is that we're learning in the event that it would come to us. I actually just recently had it, very interesting. I never had a mitzvah before of Pidyon Shvuim. It never came to me. Pidyon Shvuim means to redeem somebody who's held captive. Never ever came to me, this mitzvah. But you always learn about it. You know that it's a big deal to redeem somebody who's held captive by the goyim. It's a big deal. So, it's something that you always learn about, but it never actually happened to me. Just a week ago, I got this call. It was exactly for Pidyon Shvuim. There's some guy in Iran that his wife made false accusations about him. And she said that he's selling beer when he's not allowed to sell beer in Iran. It's a whole big mess. And the authorities took him to jail in Iran, and they're going to whip him and a whole big thing. So all of a sudden, you have a mitzvah, Pidyon Shvuim, right? You have a mitzvah, Pidyon Shvuim, all of a sudden, wow, you never think about it. You don't realize that's going to come to you, but we learned about it. We know that it's a mitzvah. So therefore, when that mitzvah comes, we got together whatever money was necessary, and boom, we did the Pidyon Shvuim, Baruch Hashem. The guy's out of jail. Again, you don't think that this will ever happen. It happens. You never know. So when you learn about the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuim with the intention that if it would ever happen, I would be willing to participate, to do something in honor of that mitzvah, thank you. So then that learning that you have done will last in your mind. Okay.
You've drilled us so much in our head that the other, mostly Shabbat after Shul, 4 people, me and 3 kids, we couldn't walk home. It was dark. I saw somebody I know. I'm like, I'm so sorry, we're leaving this home. She's like, okay, I went to my husband. She's like, I'll go and come back and get him. And I said, you're welcome. And she says, what? I said, you are getting more out of this than I am.
It's true.
She's like, what? I'm like, let me tell you what I learned. We need to be sure the whole way home.
Yes, it's true. It's true. That person now was provided with an opportunity to do a huge mitzvah. So you gave them a big zechut. Hashem. It's true. Very true. Okay. Now let's go to the third Mishnah that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa is talking to us about. Says the Mishnah, Hu haya omer, again, the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Kol sheruach haberiyot nocha hemenu, ruach hamakom nocha hemenu, which means that if you want a litmus test, something that can tell you whether somebody is beloved in heaven, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves this person, you want to test to know, does Hashem love this guy, yes or no? Says the Mishnah, says the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, Kol sheruach haberiyot nocha hemenu, if people are comfortable around him, then you should know that ruach hamakom nocha hemenu, then you should know that Hashem is happy with this person. Hashem loves this person. On the other hand, Kol she'en ruach haberiyot nocha hemenu, somebody that people are not happy around, they're not comfortable around this person, you should know en ruach hamakom nocha hemenu, Hashem is not happy with this person. It's a big statement that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa just said. If people are comfortable around this guy, in other words, he's a pleasant person, he's nice to be around, people are happy to be around him, if that is the type of person this person is, you should know Hashem loves this person.
That's why kids and animals, that's why they have a stronger sense. That's why they say like the biggest test is if kids and animals are comfortable around someone.
It's possible. I don't know kids and animals, but here we're learning about actual adults. Here we're learning about actual adults. I'll give you an example. You have one, let's say there's a lady.
People that know how to act.
That's true too.
People that act and the way they act isn't really the way they are inside, and they know how to capture.
It's possible. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a lady that she's like a snake, Every time that she opens her mouth, she's talking bad things about this person, about that person. She always has some kind of negative comment. She's complaining. She's not happy. She's always like, spewing out venom, that type of personality. So then that, people are probably not so comfortable to be around that person because She's always speaking bad, and people are wondering, oh no, what if I do something she's going to say bad about me? And she's going to say, not nice things to me. If she's mean, she might be somebody that comments not nice comments.
She brings you down when you're with her.
She puts me down. She
Her aura brings
oh,
you down. Like you feel
right,
like she brings
right.
you down.
I'm not going higher with her. I'm going down with her.
Right.
So such a person you're not comfortable to be around. You should know the mission is telling you, Hashem doesn't like this person. It's a very interesting litmus test that we're learning about. Yes.
What about a person where some people are comfortable around that person while others might not like the person? What about some?
So it seems like there's certain types of qualities overall that are big no-nos. For example, a person who constantly complains. You have a person, there are some people, Baruch Hashem, not to say anything bad about anybody, but there are some people that, when they walk over to you, there's going to be a complaint.
Mhm.
That just by the look in the eye and the approach, they're walking towards you, and that they're going to tell you some kind of a complaint. Either you did this, you did that, you did this, or that. There's something that's going to be a complaint. And that's just the kind of guy the person is. He's a complainer. And he might complain to me about this, and to his wife he complains that the eggs are, too runny, and there's this complaint, there's that complaint. The word that the rabbis used for this is called nirgan. Nun reish gimel nun, nirgan. Somebody he's always complaining. So somebody like that, it's not pleasant to be around. You're afraid. He walks over to you, you're afraid. Oh no, what now? What happened now? So such a thing is a sign that this is not a good thing. God forbid it could be a sign that he's not loved in heaven. So a person has to try and take an attitude that you want to be somebody that people are comfortable around, that they're not afraid of what you're going to say to them, not afraid of what you're going to say behind their back. That people should be comfortable with you. You should always have a pleasant attitude, pleasant demeanor, and that way, Be'ezat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will have nachat. I'll read to you what.
Rabbi, can I just connect that to when your husband comes home? Like the wives also, your demeanor, the way you accept your husband is going to set the tone in the house.
For sure.
So if you're like all upset about the day and unpleasant, and he comes home and he sees that, then he's also going to be like that. But if he sees you like smiling and Baruch Hashem, even though you had a terrible day,
right.
That's that presence also.
Yes, definitely, for sure. If you have a positive attitude when he comes home, that's going to change everything.
Right.
A lot of times it's not so. It's a very big deal.
Because you remember to complain. He comes home, you want to complain about it. That this is the time, this is the opportunity.
100%.
I know it's all on a tangent with it, but I learned that the reason that wives do that is because they want to. I'm not speaking from experience, but I learned that they, because they want to express to their husband, wow, look how much I did today. So I say, instead of why you have to look like a mess and complain to express to your husband, wow, I did so much today. You can just simply tell them, but be pleasant versus oh my God.
Exactly. Another point about this, it's very important to try and adopt an attitude of being easygoing. A lot of people get caught up about little things, and they create all kinds of fights and arguments over little nonsense. And it creates machloket, it creates all kinds of division between people, and it's not good. Person should learn to be easygoing. Sometimes mistakes happen and the guy is mad. He's upset. How could this happen? Somebody by mistake did something, or again, it was an accident, it was a mistake. But the guy's going nuts because he's not an easygoing person. It bothers him. It upsets him. How come the mistake happened with me? How come it happened with me? Buddy, relax, chill out. You gotta calm down. A lot of times people take things way too personally. It's got nothing to do with them. And everything is about me and myself and I and how I react to it. It's a big problem, right? It's a big problem. So a lot of times people need to.
How do you say levater?
You have to learn to be willing to forgive.
Right.
Willing to give in.
Or let it slide.
You gotta let things slide.
Right.
Exactly. And when somebody when somebody lets things slide, people are much more comfortable around that person. You know, I remember I once had a chavruta when I was learning in yeshiva. And, you know, sometimes in the middle of the day, let's say I got a little bit tired, I'd go to the dorm and I would take a nap. Now I'm supposed to take a nap for, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, come back and keep learning. All of a sudden you wake up, it's 4 p.m. I just slept for 2.5 hours. Now I come back to the yeshiva to start learning. And, you know, I'm expecting the guy to just let me have it. I mean, I've been missing for about an hour and a half and he's sitting there alone, you know, and he doesn't have a chavruta. So instead, this guy's like, no, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Everybody needs some sleep sometimes. Don't worry about it. Easy going, nice, pleasant. This guy's one of the nicest people because he's not so makpid. He's not so he doesn't he's not so, you know, uptight about every little thing. He's easygoing. When somebody learns to be easygoing, then he really fulfills this much better. That ruach habiriyot nochayimenu. There was a guy in Brooklyn when I was living in Brooklyn that this person, anything that you did wrong, this guy would blow up at you. One time it was Rosh Chodesh Elul, I think, and I don't know what, my wife had to go to work and I had the baby with me and I couldn't drop her off with the babysitter, it was too early, so I had to bring the baby to shul. And this guy let me have it. What are you doing bringing the baby to shul? Baby's gonna start crying, I won't be able to daven, and she let me have it so bad. And I was like, okay, fine. So the other people got mad at him, but I wasn't gonna start fighting with him. Anyway, this person one time, I came to shul and he thought that I started to pray Amidah behind him and he wanted to take his 3 steps back. But he thought that I already started to pray Amidah. And when somebody behind you is praying Amidah, so he can't take his 3 steps back. So he sees me walk behind him and then he starts to, in his spot, go, oh, like that. Like how inconsiderate of me to start praying Amidah behind him. He's gonna have to stand there now till I finish Amidah. Meanwhile, I didn't even start. He assumed I did. So eventually I had to start and I did start. And then he did have to wait because he was assuming already that, you know, no, I was in Kollel in Brooklyn. And eventually the guy had to take his 3 steps back when I finished. And then again, he let me have it. You're so inconsiderate. I don't understand you. How could you dare to just stand there and pray? Well, I have to take my 3 steps back. I'm waiting for you and waiting for you. It's just not nice, not fair. So Hashem helped me to take care of this guy. Very interesting. So one time, again, I totally didn't plan this. So I was in a different shul. He happened to be there and he was a, you know, kind of tiny, skinny person. And I was praying and he was behind me this time. And I had no idea he was there because he had kind of snuck up behind me to start praying. And I didn't even know he was there. So I took my 3 steps back and I totally bulldozed him. I sent him flying. I felt so bad. And the guy got up and he was like, oh my God. It was like, he was outraged and he got up and he left and he made a whole scene. Again, it's a type of person that nobody's comfortable around because he's just the most unpleasant personality. Now, funny thing is, ever since then, whenever I would see him in the street, he would wave to me, hi, how are you? It was like, I don't know what changed. Yeah, maybe. But there's such a thing that the guy is, you know, is just unpleasant. So it's very important to learn to take an attitude of easygoing, everything's okay, whatever happens is from Hashem, and not to get mad at this person, and to be a person that ruach habiriyot nochayimenu, people are comfortable around you. And that way you'll know that Hashem also is very comfortable with how you behave. I'll read to you the words, just a description of what's going on over here. It says like this. Kol mi she'ahuv lemata, says Rabbeinu Ovadia miBartenura. Beyadua she'ahuv lemala. Whoever is loved below is loved up on high. Al shem u'matzah chen v'sechel tov b'nei Elokim v'adam. He says like this. He says, Ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha, you shall love Hashem your God. It means sheyesh shem shamayim mitahev al yadecha, that the name of heaven should become beloved through you, that you should conduct yourself in a way that Hashem becomes something that people look forward to learning more about. For example, the person should learn and study with Talmidei Chachamim. Masa'o matano benachat im habriot. He does business pleasantly with people. Ma habriot omrot alav. What do people say about him? Ashrei aviv shelimdot Torah. Fortunate is his father who taught him Torah. Ashrei rabo shelimdot Torah. Fortunate is his rabbi who taught him Torah. Ploni shelamad Torah re'u kama na'im dorachav. So and so who learned Torah, look at how beautiful his ways are. Kama metukanim ma'asav. How delicate are his deeds. Alav ha'katuv omer vayomer li avdi ata Yisrael asher b'cha etpa'ah. This is a pasuk that says that Hashem looks at us and says, you Jew, my servant, you are the one that through you I become glorified. That's the idea. That's how we want to conduct ourselves, that people should look at us in that kind of way and feel very comfortable and happy around us. Okay, so these are all incredible words of wisdom from the great Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
So I agree. Being easygoing
Yeah.
is really it's the way to go because it's easier on yourself. You have less stress.
Right.
Okay. So how do you level it out that you're not a pushover? People are like, oh, you can go and do whatever you want to this person and she won't care. She'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, she's okay with it.
It's a
You
tough
can go
balance.
behind her back and do whatever you want and she won't care when she finds out.
It's a tough balance. You have to learn to separate two things. Number one, that whatever happens to you comes from Hashem. And number two, that this person was unfortunately just the shaliach to do that. So you don't have anger. Because anger is not, it doesn't make sense to direct your anger towards this person. It's Hashem who made that happen to you. You understand? But the thing is, you're also entitled to say, okay, I'm not going to be angry, but I will deal with this. I will put the person in their place. I'll let them know. The Rambam writes clearly that when somebody does something wrong to you, you're supposed to approach them and you're supposed to say to them, why did you do this and that to me? That was not okay.
You're
And
allowed to do that.
It's a mitzvah to do that.
Oh,
It's
it's a
called
mitzvah to confront them?
hocheach tochiach et amitecha. It's a huge mitzvah to do that.
But not enough time.
No, you did. It's not. You're not losing your cool. You're not.
But what if
You're
someone
not
does
angry.
it to you with anger?
Okay, that doesn't mean you get angry. It just means that you have a mitzvah to go and to tell them, why did you do this, this, and that to me? That was not okay. And what?
Sometimes they sit back on him. It's better to tell him in front.
Tell them
Don't
their
talk
face.
behind
She's
their
saying
back. Don't talk
Other
behind
people
their
that-
back.
Don't talk. You're saying don't talk behind
Don't
their
talk
back.
behind that, talk in their face.
Exactly.
No,
To explain, that's exactly what the Rambam writes. You go to the person, you say, Lama asita kach v'kach. Why did you do this and that? And then it says in the rest of the pasuk, Velo tisa alav chet. And by doing so, the guy won't. Hopefully, he won't do it again. He will not continue to sin. So the idea
Do
is,
it in a way that creates
listen.
like an animosity.
You don't need to be a confrontational person, but at the same time, you don't need to be a pushover. You can explain to the person that you did something wrong. Let them understand that that was not correct, and that's that. Hopefully, they learn their lesson. But if not, at least you did yours. You know, you explain that you're not going to tolerate that. That's it. It's
Why
okay.
can't you just forgive and forget? Put your gava down. It's the hardest thing that a person can do. Put your gava down. And what it's gonna help me if I'm
No,
gonna
because
stop why you did
that's after you tried. After you tried explaining to them that they misbehaved, they did something wrong.
When
was
a
out of
person is
line.
misbehaving, they know.
Yeah, but but she's worried that they'll just keep on doing it. You need to show that, hey, that's not okay, so that they don't keep on doing it. But you tried, you explained,
But
you
the
did.
person keeps doing it because you show them that it touches you. You show them that they're successful. That's why. If you just forget about it and you just don't answer and you put it.
It depends on the
It's hard,
situation.
I'm not saying.
No,
it's
it
easy.
depends on the situation. There are some times where that might be the right attitude, and sometimes where you think that if you say something, you can actually put an end to it. So you're going to have to judge what kind of situation it is. Some situations, there's nothing to talk about. There's no one to talk to. It's like talking to the wall. Then yeah, there's really nothing to do. Forgive and forget. There are
There's a saying,
situations
bad
like that.
people don't die. They just change. They're just being exchanged. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's listen, I hear. I'm just saying that it depends on the circumstance. But that doesn't mean you're not a pleasant person to be around. It just means that you're somebody that's addressing something that should not have happened. You're saying
Sometimes
this
you're helping them.
also true. Sometimes they don't even know they did something wrong. They don't realize they did something wrong. So you have to bring it to their
That's also
attention.
true.
Yeah. So I want to just finish off. Baruch Hashem, we learned today 3 Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot. I want to just finish off with, being that tomorrow night is Lag Baomer, just a couple of points about another, of course, incredible, tremendous tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that tomorrow night, Lag Baomer, is his yahrzeit. And we have a very important day ahead of us where we celebrate his passing, meaning and all the Torah that he brought to the world, the secrets of Kabbalah and all of that. So I want to share with you just one very interesting story that I read about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai from a midrash. We all know that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a tremendous, tremendous Kabbalist. By the way, as were all the Tanaim, all of them. The Vilna Gaon says any rabbi mentioned in the Gemara, meaning even the later generation, the Amoraim, any rabbi mentioned there was someone that could be Mechayeh Metim, was somebody who could bring back people to life after they died. Talking about tremendous people. But they also had a lot of Chokhmat Chaim as well, meaning, of course, needless to say, they also had many instances where they showed their knowledge of the world as well. So I want to share with you one story that I saw about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. There was a woman that came to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and this was in the place called Tzaidan, which is a place in the north of Israel. And what happened was, she unfortunately did not have children with her husband. She was married for 10 years, and she did not have any kids. And of course, they were very, very sad because of that. And the halacha says, technically, if they're together for 10 years and they don't have children, so they're allowed to get divorced because they still want to have children. It could be that together they're not able to, but maybe with some other partner they would be able to. So the story goes like this. This is a midrash in Shir HaShirim Rabbah Aleph. It says the following. They came to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and look at what he told them. He said, listen, you guys had a wonderful marriage together. Everything was great. You got married together and everything was fantastic. So you made a celebration and you had a party when you got married. So I want you to celebrate and have a wonderful celebration when you're getting divorced. Okay? So he's going to give you the get, right? But before he gives you the get, have a party. Celebrate the wonderful 10 years of marriage that you had together. That's the advice that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai gave them. So they made a huge party. They threw a wonderful event. Everybody came. They celebrated. And the husband got a little bit intoxicated. And he tells his wife, listen, we were together for so many years. It was a great marriage. Sad it has to end like this, but I'll tell you one thing. Take anything you want in this house that belongs to me. Just take it and keep it for the rest of your life. No questions asked, whatever you want. So, okay, very good. The guy was very intoxicated and he went to the bed. He fell asleep, was knocked out. And the woman saw that she has an interesting moment of opportunity, and she tells the men around him that pick up my husband in the bed and take him over to my father's home. Take him to the house of my father, like that. So the guy wakes up in his bed. He looks around a few hours later and he's like, where am I? And she says, you're in my father's house. So he said, why am I in your father's house? Because she said, because you told me to take whatever I wanted. And there's nothing that I want more than you. So that's what she said, right? So they were like amazed at each other. And they said, we have to do something. So they told Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai what happened, and he prayed for them, and then they had a child. Amazing. Happily ever after. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was trying to bring out in them that they're still a couple, they're still married, they're still together. And he did that in the most incredible way. Just very briefly, why do we light fires on Lag Baomer? What is the significance of lighting a fire? So the idea is, of course, we know that when somebody passes away, we light a ner neshama, the candle for that person, because it says ner Hashem mishmat adam. The candle of Hashem is the neshama of a person, and we light a candle in order to represent that the neshama of the person still exists. So we light a fire, so to say, like a ner neshama for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's the first and most simple explanation. The next explanation is that when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai died, he was revealing secrets of Kabbalah to his students. And because he had a lot of things to reveal to his students before he passed on. So Hashem did not let the sun go down that day until the secrets were finished to be revealed, until he finished teaching his students. So being that there was a prolonged amount of light in the sky that day, so we, so to say, we light up the night that to, so to say, like commemorate what happened, that great miracle that the sun did not set until Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai finished teaching his students before he passed away. That's another reason why we light. Another explanation is because the Torah that he taught his Talmidim is like light to the world. It brought so much depth and so much more understanding of the Torah to us that it's like a light that's shining. So we light the fire to commemorate just exactly how much incredible depth and spiritual light he brought into the world. And last but not least, another explanation is, as you know, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of those people, and so to his son Rabbi Elazar, that they were really fire. There are certain Tanaim in the Talmud, in the Mishnah, that they are fire. For example, Yonatan ben Uziel was the #1 student of Hillel. It says, as a bird would fly over his head, if he was in the middle of learning Torah, the bird would burn up. Says the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah. He was fire. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the same thing. He came out of the cave. He saw somebody who was plowing his field, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai knows that this world is temporary and we should be involved in Torah and nothing else. That was his opinion. And therefore he said, these guys are menichim chaye olam v'oskim b'chaye sha'ah. These guys are leaving aside the study of Torah and they're working in the field for what? For plants. So as he would look at them, they would burn up and they would become a pile of bones. That's what the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat. Scary story, scary. But just to commemorate the fire that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was, what he represented, that's why we light bonfires on Lag Baomer as well, to celebrate the incredible intensity of his Kedusha that was like a fire. Yeah. You have a question?
I'm not sure I understand. As he would look at people, they would turn into fire?
They would turn into bones.
Bones?
A
Why?
pile of bones. What?
Why?
Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was punished for that. He had to go back into the cave that he came out of for another 12 months when that happened. But the reason that that happened was because he would look at somebody who was working in his field. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai held that you should sit and learn and learn and learn, do nothing else. Hashem will send you something somehow. Just exactly what happened to him. So he looked at that person working in the field and he was upset. Why isn't he learning Torah? And boom, the guy turned into a pile of bones, which is a scary thought that could be. But the idea is that he was that level of fire, and we're commemorating that by lighting the fire and dancing around it in his honor. So that's what's going on. So we talked about two incredible Tanaim, Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that Baruch Hashem we learned a lot about today. And if we have any questions, we can take them now.
That's a good example that our fire has to be directed in the right way. So if you have fire, as long as it's
You're right. It has to be directed properly. Sure. Hashem sent them back to the cave, that it shouldn't be directed at people who are working.
Imagine we'd be punished like that now. It's like, Shifa, you do take that carrot and go to a cave for 12 days.
All right.
I would love to.
Okay. If we have any questions, yes.
So can I tell you how I learned fear of Hashem, be scared of Hashem?
Okay.
What you were talking about?
Okay, sure.
So somebody who I took the class with said, imagine a little child with their parent, and the parent says, you could do whatever you want, but just don't make the mess. So the kid is going to be afraid of making the mess because of being punished by the parent. So it's kind of the same thing with us. So Hashem is giving us the rules.
Mhm.
It says, follow the rules, but don't break the rules. If you break the rules, this is what's going to happen. So
Right.
it's
Right. That's for sure the very simple and correct understanding of it. I was just pointing out that it's also understanding that we need to when we learn it, we actually have to go ahead and
right, but
it's the same idea, similar. To have a fear, to actually have a fear, correct. Right.
You don't do what you're supposed to be doing.
Then there's going to be punishment.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, we have to know that. There's definitely consequences, but hopefully we'll all only have good consequences because we do good things. Okay, everybody, chazakim buchim. Thank you.
Rabbi.